Welcome to the 15th and final building video of Tower of the Planets, the longest and most difficult tower I've ever built. At long last, today is the day this massive project comes to a conclusion, and it will finally be complete. Not only will the final floor, Pluto, be built, but there will also be no temporary trusses or teleporters or random difficulty spikes by the end of this video. All loose ends will be tied up today to get ready for the finale of the series. While this is the final building video, there will still be one more Tower of the Planets video after this one, and that will be the full playthrough video, which I will premiere on my channel a week or two after this video goes out. In that video, I will showcase this absurdly long tower in its entirety, and it has a very real chance of being not only over an hour long, but also my longest video ever. I hope to see you at the premiere. Let's kick things off by finishing up the floors for Uranus and Neptune, which I have not added anything to since their videos were posted. We'll start with Uranus, which is mostly done. Remember that to represent the magician, this floor is filled with jump scares and trolls, but nothing that actually makes you lose progress. For example, this can collide false platform with a teleporter underneath it. Really, I just continued exactly what I was doing in the video where I built most of the floor. More gameplay, more detail. Neptune was pretty similar. For this floor, to represent the Mystic, the gameplay is mysterious and confusing with lots of false paths, but Tower of Deep Darkness lanterns to guide your way. What remains to be done is detailing the floor, as well as making the false paths be more interesting than just copy-pasted platforms. We'll start with detail, where I basically use this lighter blue, sort of pointing in the direction you jump to in general. Honestly, as is, I think the detail on this floor is pretty good, with the bright yellow neon contrasting the dark blue. But now there's even more detail, I guess. Next, I need to build all the false paths, though this does bring up the question of how much effort do I really want to put into a path you're not even going to go on? Well, about as much effort as it takes to make the first couple jumps believable and not obviously the wrong path, as would be the case if they were just copy-pasted. Even though the lanterns pretty well indicate what's a false path anyway, but like, those are supposed to indicate that. If you're not scanning for lanterns close enough, I want you to end up going along a false path, which they all lead to a dead end, and most of them have you jump down to a platform you can't jump back to, thus making there be a chance of getting soft-locked if you go the wrong way. So there you go, Neptune is done. On to Pluto, the final stop of the journey. Is Pluto a planet? The question everyone argues about for no reason, when in reality we should be arguing about why cloudy weather equals warm and sunny weather equals cold on Groundhog Day. The answer is officially no, Pluto isn't a planet, yet people insist on saying, I'm just gonna pretend I didn't see that. It's a dwarf planet since it's too small to be a planet, right? Well, yes, but actually no. When Pluto was reclassified as a dwarf planet, the requirements for being a planet were set to this. The planet must be directly orbiting the sun, i.e. it's not orbiting something orbiting the sun, so like the moon isn't directly orbiting the sun. The planet must have enough of its own gravity so that it forms into a spherical shape. It must have cleared the neighborhood around its orbit path, meaning it has enough gravity to get rid of any objects of comparable size in its path. Pluto meets the first two requirements, but not the third. There's a ton of stuff in its orbit path because it's in the Kuiper belt, which is basically the asteroid belt but bigger and farther from the sun. A similar situation happened with Ceres in the asteroid belt, originally called a planet but then reclassified as more stuff in the asteroid belt was discovered. I've got more points to support my argument that Pluto's not a planet, but let's get back to the tower for now. There's still temporary teleporters across the void between planets, but I promise they'll be filled with real gameplay by the end of this video. For my current objective of building Pluto, though, just the final platform of its proceeding outside will do the job. It will be a slow-ish conveyor taking you the last little distance to the floor. For coloring it, let's decide the floor's colors. Main color, accent color, neon color. Done. What is the theme of this final floor going to be? Well, it's going to be the easiest floor of the tower, around challenging difficulty at the highest and all over a safety net. As you complete the gameplay, you'll read some philosophical signs, which takes me to my next point as to why Pluto isn't a planet. The signs read as follows. In math, 2 plus 2 will always be 4. In English, the articles will always be a, an, and the. But in science, things are always changing. Pluto was discovered in 1930, but in light of new understanding, new knowledge, it was decided Pluto wasn't a planet anymore. Specifically, Pluto fails to meet the requirement of clearing the neighborhood. It's not large enough to have the gravity needed to take anything in its path around the sun into its own orbit. We know that knowledge and understanding is a quest that we can never truly succeed at. There will always be more things to learn, more things to discover, more places to explore. And yet, we keep on learning to get as close as we possibly can to total understanding of the universe around us. There's something beautiful about that. more philosophical philosophy at the end of the tower, which we're almost at. I put the signs in place as I built the floor because that was the best way to get the pacing how I wanted it, where you read a sign, do a few jumps, read a sign, do a few jumps, repeat. The gameplay is mostly purist other than kill breaks and spinnies. I made it so the player collides with the spinnies and nothing else by adding a string value to the spinny parts, setting the name to set collision group, and setting the value to only collide with players. Throughout the rest of the floor, there are a few more spinnies where you have to jump against the spinning and spinny kill breaks. Another thing I used in the floor were 3x2 platforms, which I also did on Neptune to reference Neptune and Pluto's 3-2 orbital resonance. When I built Neptune, I explained what that means. This references their 3-2 orbital resonance, meaning Neptune orbits the sun 3 times for every 2 times Pluto does, and their gravitational pulls on each other maintains that perfect ratio, unlike some ratios I could mention. There were many more 3x2s on Neptune than Pluto though, since Neptune is a much longer floor. That's right, we're already done with the main Pluto floor. Time for the final outside of this hour-long soul-crushing journey. There have been many outsides along the way, so much endurance and nerve control has been needed to make it here. This is the final test, to prove that you are truly worthy. You jump across a 2-stud gap. Yeah, so technically this is the final outside, but it's free since Pluto is the easiest floor of the tower, which I think makes for a good conclusion. Really, this is just a means of getting to the spaceship with the wind pad. Building the spaceship wasn't too hard, now I just need to decorate the interior. I put a sign that says next stop Earth because the idea is the spaceship takes you back home, and for the wind pad I made it a sphere, like a planet, and spelled out TOTP on the wall behind it. I'll probably add more decorations in here later, but this is where things get interesting. A cutscene type thing with a continuation of the philosophical signs from earlier. What I had in mind was that the camera would move to outside the spaceship, look up at the space skybox, and philosophical messages would appear on your screen. To do that, I need to make a custom client object, and I'm about to say that a lot, so I'll shorten it to CCO. I'll spare you the details of how it's coded because that would be really boring, but there is a key difference between this CCO and the others I've made for the tower. You see, I coded these CCOs so they'd be easy to implement anywhere in the tower, with their settings easily adjustable by changing values inside the part. I did that even though I made most of these CCOs for a single section of the tower, and it would have made some sense to code it specifically for the instance in which I was about to use it, but I didn't. Why? Well, to be consistent with the client objects already in the kit, and because it would be nice to have these CCOs easy to implement if I ever need that specific one in a future tower. But for the CCO I'm making for this cutscene, I just coded it specifically for the instance I'm about to use it for, since what I want to do is so specific here. Basically, the first thing I need to do is make the camera move to a few different positions, which I used C-frames for. It's easier to get those C-frames if I place a temporary part positioned and rotated where I want the camera to go. Then use the tween service to tween the camera to those positions, meaning it gradually moves to them and gives the option for easing styles. After all the camera moves, I need to fade different messages in and out of the screen, which I tried using the tween service for as well, but for some reason that didn't work. So instead I used a for loop, which isn't as good of a way of doing that, but it still worked, so whatever. Now at the moment, when this code is done running, your camera is just stuck here forever, but I'll fix that later when I make the game teleport you to the win room and I make a badge and legit mode and stuff. Speaking of the badge, you'll officially win the tower and you'll get the badge as soon as you hit the win pad, which is at the start of the cutscene. That way, if you disconnect during the cutscene, you still win the tower. With all that said, time for the philosophical ending of the tower. Well, your journey across the solar system has come to a conclusion. You explored many worlds, from the scorching landscape of Venus, to the lakes of methane on Titan, to the distant ice fields of Pluto. Of course, what you explored today was just one of trillions of planetary systems out there, each one just as diverse as this one. The scale of the universe is unfathomable. Atoms building molecules, molecules building asteroids, planets, stars, all building galaxies, and ultimately everything that has and ever will exist. So next time you find yourself looking up at the night sky, take a moment to appreciate the truly beautiful universe we live in. GG. Now imagine that with some fitting background music. It's gonna be a while before I finish the OST, but when I eventually get around to the song for Pluto, it will be called Distant, since this is the furthest point from the sun in the tower. Unlike most of my compositions, which are scored for concert band, this one will be scored for orchestra, meaning there will be strings. That'll be important for making this an end of a journey type song. It'll be a slow tempo and be relatively samey throughout, like it won't have obvious changes every 8 measures like is usually the case, such as here. But here's where things get interesting. Since the song will start as soon as you reach Pluto, and the player could take any amount of time to reach the cutscene, I can't really sync the music to the cutscene, unless I make like a new audio file start as soon as the cutscene begins, so that way it can be synced. I'm not sure yet if I'll call said audio file like a movement 2 or an alternative ending or what, but point is, it will begin sounding similar to the main song, and then be beautiful to complement the cutscene before ending beautifully with that GG. Next up on the agenda, it's time to finally get rid of these temporary conveyors and teleporters. Let's start with the outside from Io to Saturn. Some of it has already been built, this moving platform. The rest of the outside had some snaky wraparounds around walls separated from each other by conveyors. Notice that the altitude drops suddenly toward the end, with conveyors accounting for much of that decrease. That was somewhat of a recurring theme as I built these outsides. The gameplay I build seems to have a tendency to go upwards, probably because that's the case in most towers. And I mean, that's not necessarily a good or bad thing, but I suppose it's interesting to mention. It'll be relevant again later in the video. Let's move on to the next outside, Saturn to Titan. Many of these outsides form a path that is a somewhat straight line, but for this one that is especially the case because I built it along a single part, which of course is a perfectly straight line. The obstacles are wraparounds in some places, or semi-transparent sections of the main path which are can't collide false, where other types of obstacles can be featured, such as a funny ladder wrap or a single rope hanging platform. Shoving platforms are also featured. Remember, Titan's gimmick is that your healing is disabled the entire time, so try to limit how much kill brick damage you take. It's a way of increasing intensity that's less immediately stressful than an outside with no safety net. Afterwards, your healing is re-enabled, but you'll probably be at low health at that point, so I shouldn't have put any kill bricks for a while. I know I could make a heal part, but I decided against it. This entire outside has no kill bricks, and in fact is completely purist, so there's no client objects at all, and it instead mainly features wall hops. Looking at the outside from a distance, it looks like I did a pretty good job of directing the parkour downwards, but closer inspection reveals a different story. Each little section of wall hops goes up quickly before a jump or two sends you downwards. Curiously, most jumps of this outside go upwards, yet overall you go downwards. Interesting. Let's talk about difficulty for a second. From the end of the Saturn floor onwards, the tower is supposed to slowly decrease in difficulty as it approaches the end. So on this outside, a little bit after Saturn, the raw difficulty should be around intense or remorseless. But that can change if it's over the safety net, which most of these wall hops actually are. So the wall hops are probably closer to peak remorseless or insane, while the stuff that's actually over the void is easier. Some wall hops involve moving left to right to get up a wall, and others go in one direction. There's also a wall walk and then a shadow wall hop section. The shadows on this wall indicate where you can wall hop on the semi-transparent wall. I'd suggest facing your camera towards this wall and wall hopping backwards. Then the outside concludes with a jump onto the icy rings of the next planet. The next outside is Uranus to Neptune. This is one of the final outsides, and at this point you're probably very tired and very nervous. Last Tower of the Planets video, I said this of the outside. Now the parkour leading up to here is going to come from about right there. Honestly, what I might do is, it's not even going to be parkour, it might just be a free conveyor ride like that, or maybe just like a moving part. I'll give you a break on this second to last outside between the floors. As I considered that option though, I liked it less because I'd be quite annoyed seeing a line of parkour between every planet and moon except for one. But it can still be a break outside. What if I told you you don't have to do anything on this entire outside? It's basically an auto section from a Geometry Dash level. Your character will mostly be moved around by conveyors. Enjoy. Except there's a bit more to it than that. The Uranus floor is filled with trolls, so a big troll should be the final one. You made it past all those traps? Well, here's one more before you complete the floor. Why, of course, a trust exercise. This entire outside is free as long as you can trust this simple statement. Once you get on the conveyor, do not move or jump until you reach Neptune. You can move your camera though. As you ride the conveyor, you gotta trust that statement despite being headed straight for an insta-kill or straight for the void. Well, after about 30 seconds, you realize that the insta-kills are fake and there are invisible conveyors everywhere. At that point, you can relax for the entire outside, which is multiple minutes long. But problem. How do I make it so that if you move, you get insta-killed? Well, it involved using another purpose-built custom client object like the one with the camera from earlier. I can't just use user input service to detect when the player presses WASD or space because it would only detect that on computer. Instead, I will make use of humanoid.move direction, which is a vector 3 value describing the direction your character is moving. It's 000 when the player's not pressing any movement buttons, and when they are pressing any movement buttons, it will be something other than 000. Note that if the player is moving, but not because they're pressing movement keys, like if they're on a conveyor or something, that this value will still be 000. So basically, I can use this to detect if the player is pressing any movement buttons. So all I have to do is constantly check if this value is 000 or not. And if it's not, kill the character. To kill the player if they jump, it's luckily a little bit easier because user input service has an event called jump request that fires when a player attempts to jump from any device. When the character steps on the start part, begin running the code to kill the character if they move or jump. When the character steps on the end part, break the while loop, and they can safely move or jump again. I can test if this works on various devices by going to Test Device and then choosing a device. I can confirm this works on an iPhone 4S created by Aristotle himself, I'm pretty sure. Oh, and it also works on a PS4 when I plug in a controller. So on all 3 platforms we're good. 2 outsides remain. The first one is very quick, Neptune and Triton. I just continued the gameplay style used throughout Neptune for a few more jumps, so I used killbricks, hanging platforms, and rope swings. That leaves the Triton to Pluto outside. Even though there technically is an outside after Pluto, it's literally 1 jump, so you can effectively consider this outside the final outside instead. The outside begins with pretty easy gameplay, notice again its tendency to go upwards, and then there's an X-pusher that travels a longer than average but not too long distance. The reason is so that it takes a little longer to travel across the X-pusher, so I can have the lighting change over those couple seconds. The brightness, clock time, and fog end will all decrease a little. This way there isn't much light because this is so far away from the sun. Like on Neptune though, there will be Tower of Deep Darkness lanterns to help you see. The X-pusher leads you to the first of 2 asteroids you'll see during this outside. They'll serve as safety nets, which should let you relax a little. You'd probably be pretty nervous being so far into the tower. After some pretty easy 1-stud pole jumps, a no-jump section begins, a callback to the very start of the tower. Like the opening no-jump section, this one will feature /E cheer jumps and walk-arounds. This continues for a bit before a shadow section type thing. The neon indicates where invisible walls are, and dashed neon indicates walls that are short enough to jump over. So during this section, you will get your jump back. I built the platform on which the shadow walls will be placed and then put the neon in place. The walls themselves will be put in later. Now consider this. If I put a neon part like this, you could just walk around. Now I could put like an edgy sign that says don't even try walk arounding. But I decided instead to just have this include walkarounds, so I somewhat randomly placed neon and dashed lines around the platform, but I did consider the route the player is actually going to go, around this way. At one point you press a button, which lets you go underneath the platform, where after some walkarounds, you reach the jump resetter. At that point, you'll make your way back through the door and near the start, where you can go this way now and back underneath to get around this wall. Then it's just a few more jumps to the next asteroid. Triton and Pluto are in the solar system. You know what else is in the solar system? Florida. I'd now like to introduce the Florida Man shortcut. Trademark. This absolutely insane skip is indeed possible, but because it's so far into the tower and requires such precise timing, only a Florida man would dare attempt this on a real run. I managed to land the jump maybe like 5 times out of like 300 attempts. 1.666% aren't very good odds. But hey, if you manage to land it, congratulations, you get to skip like 30 seconds of gameplay. The rest of the final outside was pretty straightforward. I made these spinning trusses, which is kinda cool. The final outside ends with some conveyor launches. At long last, all the gameplay of Tower of the Planets has been built, but we're far from finished. Let's move on to nerfing the Saturn Timelock 6 part because it's horribly on-site readable. So as a reminder of what this section is, the Saturn floor represents Gustav Holst's movement for Saturn in the Planet Suite, which is titled Saturn the Bringer of Old Age. So the Saturn floor is the longest floor of the tower, and it's divided into 3 sections: the rings, the tower-like thingy, and the rising metallic hydrogen section. Deep inside Jupiter and Saturn are oceans of metallic hydrogen, or hydrogen under such pressure and heat that it conducts electricity like a metal. Both floors end with a Flood Escape 2 type rising lava section, except it's not lava, it's metallic hydrogen, and it insta-kills, by the way. The rising metallic hydrogen section that ends Saturn is also called the Timelock 6 section because Timelock 6 is the song I composed for it. This is sort of the tower's climax in difficulty. After you complete it, the tower slowly decreases in difficulty until the end. You're being chased by an insta-kill the whole time, so it should definitely be sight-readable, and the raw difficulty shouldn't go above, like, remorseless. If there weren't a time limit or anything, this level of sight-readability would be fine, but like I just said, that isn't the case. The speed you'd probably go while sight-reading is not fast enough to outrun the metallic hydrogen. Now you might be thinking, well, just slow down the metallic hydrogen. But truly in theme, I'm locked by the time. Timelock 6 is 3 minutes 20 seconds, or 200 seconds, so whatever distance the metallic hydrogen must travel, it must take 200 seconds. And I mean, take a listen to the ending of the song being timed absolutely perfectly. So you have about 200 seconds to reach the top, but the goal is that going at a reasonable pace should get you to the end in about 150 seconds. That has been met, but like I said, sight readability is the problem. There are 2 causes of that problem. 1. Unequally distributed vertical mobility. Now, I'm not referring to the game pass, but to simply how much you go upwards. The goal is for that rate to be roughly constant, so you ascend at the same rate the whole time. In reality, it goes a bit more like this. And the second reason for the unsight readability is the metallic hydrogen's easing style. That cause wasn't nearly as obvious though, and it wasn't until I began to fix the first cause that I even learned of the existence of the second cause. So to equally distribute the vertical mobility, I placed 6 checkpoints of how high up you should get in how much time. This was done by dividing the 150 seconds into sixths, or 25-second increments, and also dividing the number of studs you ascend, which is 351.5, into sixths as well, which are increments of 58.58 studs. Then I began revamping the gameplay by moving some elements of gameplay around, adding some new sections, and deleting others. But even then, you still had to go really fast to outrun the metallic hydrogen. It was at that point that I began to suspect the easing style of the metallic hydrogen might be part of the problem. Its current settings, quadratic easing with the outs direction, will have it immediately start moving when you hit the activator button, and then slow down as it approaches the end. So to make time for it to slow down at the end, it's got to rise faster towards the beginning. If I set the easing style to linear instead, it will start and stop immediately, but it'll rise at a constant rate. And it would seem that was the problem, because with linear easing, now when you reach 50 seconds into the gameplay, the metallic hydrogen is very far below you. Most of the changes I made to the gameplay were in the first half of the section. Once I reached the halfway point, I changed very little, which was not what I expected. I thought for sure this no-jump maze would have to go, and so would this section of little vertical mobility towards the end. But actually no. The metallic hydrogen being way below you makes it work, and it even decreases the need for equally distributed vertical mobility in the second half of the section. So in a way, the easing style was actually more of the problem than was the equally distributed vertical mobility. So I probably could have fixed it originally by just changing the easing style, but still, having the equally distributed vertical mobility is definitely a good thing. In the end, going at full speed can get you through the entire thing in about 2.5 minutes, the same as it was before, and that was my goal. You should be able to go a lot slower now, and hopefully a sight reading speed is fast enough to outrun the metallic hydrogen. The thing is, how am I going to truly test sight readability since I know exactly how all the jumps go because I built them and play tested them like 100 times? The answer is, ask people in the Discord to try it out. Nubber had a few suggestions mostly related to indication, which I improved, but from the looks of it, I've successfully made the section way more sight readable. My next item on the list is also on the Saturn floor, and it's adding detail to the middle 50% of the floor. So first I need to put more of these trees, which is just copy pasting them, randomizing the rotation and size, and moving them. Building one of these things took me like 20 minutes, so ain't no way I've got the patience to do that like 6 more times just so they're slightly different from one another. Second, I need to place more of these clocks. Throughout the floor, the hour hands on each clock will spell out the digits of pi. And now for the tower's greatest symbol of procrastination, the spacesuit at the very beginning. The idea here is that in order to open this door, you first gotta get a spacesuit. But for months, it's been step on the word spacesuit. Well, no more. Here's the objective. There's a button that will put the Tower of the Planet spacesuit, shirt, and pants on your avatar, as well as open the door, and another button that you can press to reset to your avatar's default shirt and pants if you so choose. To make the spacesuit giver is pretty simple, at least when compared to the remover. Note that I do need to change the player's clothes on the server side, that way other players can see the change. What I can do is make a custom client object, which shockingly runs on the client, but it will fire a remote event that tells the server to change the player's clothes. So that's it for the giver. For the remover, I mean, it's not that much more complicated, but for whatever reason it took me 3 hours of trying different things to get it to work. Looking up what other people tend to do to reset a character to the default avatar, it seems that the easiest thing to do is respawn their character. But this won't work because that would reset everything in the tower kit, like buttons and stuff. Sure, this is like 20 seconds into the tower, but it would also cause problems with like the timer and stuff, which I'll eventually add. In the end, I made it so that when a player joins the game, it will put a shirt and pants item in server storage, which is only accessible to the server, that is named according to their user ID and has the shirt template and pants template of the character the player spawns in with, which will be their Roblox avatar. That way, this can be referenced to reset the player's clothes. And lastly, for the spacesuit, I want to make it so that you can purchase the shirt and pants to use elsewhere on Roblox. These are on sale on my Roblox group, link in the description, already, but I can shamelessly plug them here too. That involves placing parts with click detectors that when you click them, you'll be prompted to purchase the item. That can be done with a simple server-sided script. So with the completion of that, Tower of the Planets is finished. Well, I still have to build the lobby and legit mode and stuff, but the tower itself is finished. So that will conclude the building of this video. Now I'll play through all the new sections I built in the video. We're going to play through these few sections in the order they appear in the tower, so we're going to start with the spacesuit that I was just building. So at the moment you can see the door is closed. Now I'm using a different avatar at the moment to show you that when I step near here, you can see it will change it, and if I click on the mannequin, either towards the bottom or towards the top, it'll prompt you to buy the shirt or pants. And then here, you can step on that. Oh wait, I know why it's not working. It's because I joined the game wearing the outfit that I'm now going to switch to, which is the one with Tower of the Planets. And so it saved this shirt and pants, like, in server storage, so it was referencing that. So it was resetting it. it also opened the door. Next up, let's go to this outside, which some of it was built already, like at the start of this video, that being this moving part section, but I'm just going to go ahead and show the whole IO to Saturn outside. So yeah, you press that button to start it. There's also a resetter. Then it moves a bit slow at first because of the easing style. Just like walk along with it and make sure not to like fall behind, which might happen on some of these gaps you got to go through. And there's the end. You can just jump the rest of that distance or wait if you want to play it safe. Then you got to wrap around onto this one stud and onto that wedge, and then some conveyor launches to right here. Is that a shortcut? Oh, I'll have to fix that. What you're supposed to do is go over here and then wrap around, go on that half stud, and ladder flick up. Some more conveyor launches, then you can just climb up here and ladder flick. Some more conveyor launches, spinnies, and that leads you to Saturn, where there's also a sign that I put that says find 3 buttons, 1 on each ring, and then go to the parkour to the right of this sign to progress. The yellow squares are speed pads. So that begins the Saturn floor, where you'd complete this rings section that eventually will lead you to here. This is the tower-like thing. I really don't know how else to describe it. It's like all the parkour going up for quite a ways. It's all over that safety net, so it's sort of structured like a tower. Notice the decoration I added around here. We've got the trees that you can see, and the clocks around here. And now to the greatly improved Time Lock 6 part. I will also need to add a sign right here that'll say, like, beware. You know, basically warning you about this section coming up. So the metallic hydrogen starts rising, like, as soon as you get teleported, so you have no time to waste. Elevators. Yeah, those are indicated like that. Generally on time sections, I try to avoid long signs, but I'm sure 1 or 2 words is fine. There is another sign like that coming up. You can just see the metallic hydrogen has gone above the like mesh safety net. So yeah, that means you're gonna have to rely on landing on other platforms if you fall and hope to survive. Button is over here. This part was extended a little bit. Well, is that the right word? I don't know. I sort of lengthened, yeah, I guess that's right. Like, before you kind of just went, like, directly that way. Now you gotta go get a button, since I needed the timing to be right. This part, where you jump up these, this was originally earlier in the section, but I moved it here. You don't actually have to jump up all of them. You only need to get to, like, the 4th from the top or higher, and then you can jump. Go up the falling parts. You can skip the last one if you want. And this is the no-jump maze. It's all one path, though, so you don't have to worry about taking a wrong turn. And we're almost there. You can jump onto this, and then you can actually just kind of go towards the center and jump to it like that if you don't want to wait. And maybe just go along the edge of that to avoid getting, like, falling, because conveyor. Okay, that leads us straight into the next section that I was going to show you, which is the Saturn to Titan outside, which is another new one. This is the one that sticks, like, pretty much strictly to this perfectly straight line, unlike the other outsides that just sort of kind of follow a line. These few jumps here probably make up like 20% of the whole outside. If I could stop missing that, I might need to nerf that because I missed it like 8 times in a row. Make sure you wrap around to that side of that ladder. Use the shoving platform to jump up to the one stud. So probably wait for it to go to this side and then like jump to there. Go on top of this wall, jump to here, and make sure you time that. And there you go. That leads you to Titan. Eventually you'll complete that, and that will lead you to this outside, which is Titan to Uranus. Your healing has been re-enabled. Not that I took any damage, because I'm definitely that good at the game, and definitely didn't just use no clip to skip the whole thing. Okay, now some of these you can align on, some of them you can't. This one you can't. Well, actually, you can probably, yeah, do that, that's easier. So, pretty much, you do, like, a few wall hops, and then, like, a few non-wall hops, usually, like, wraparounds or something. Okay, now I got this part, which is aligned, thankfully, because if it wasn't, that would be quite annoying. Wrap around on either side, but probably do that side, since you stay over the safety net by doing that. And go to here, and then there we go. Alright, here comes the funny wall walk. We got this sign explaining how to do this. To wall walk, hold W and D and spam the greater than less than keys. It's a good idea to line up ahead of time, and yeah, it's not the most consistent thing ever. But it's over a safety net, so yeah. Although you can still fall off, as I just demonstrated. Maybe I should put something to prevent that. The shadows on the wall indicate where you can wall hop on the semi-transparent wall. I'd suggest facing your camera towards this wall and wall hopping backwards. Yeah, it's the same motion pretty much. It's just you're pressing S instead of W. It also is very inconsistent, but that's why there's a safety net. Alright, and the final wall hops of the outside. They're very easy. And you don't even have to jump to that final platform, although it's probably a good idea too. After you complete that whole floor filled with trolls and things, you read some signs, you made it past all those traps. Well, here's one more before you complete the floor. Why, of course. a trust exercise. This entire outside is free as long as you can trust this simple statement. Once you get on the conveyor, do not move or jump until you reach Neptune. You can move your camera though. Now the part that like activates the if you move or jump you die is like right there, so you can like just get on the conveyor. Hey, there's an insta-kill ahead. You should probably move out of the way. Well, hopefully you'll trust that sign over there and not, because if you do move, you'll get insta-killed. This will not insta-kill you because it's a fake insta-kill. It looks like the conveyor is going to end. Just kidding. Yeah, it's pretty much like this the whole time. The whole thing lasts about like 3 minutes, I believe. Alright, now these conveyors might look pretty normal, but if you look at them from just the right angle, it says Among Us. This is how it concludes. Once you get over to here and you land on this platform, you're good to move around. This says you're good to press movement keys now. Maybe I should move it to be like right there so you don't land on top of that text. Alright, so then you would complete the Neptune floor, or the main floor, I guess, before it technically ends like here. This was one of the outsides I built. It's very short, just leading to, don't do that. It leads to Triton, and it basically just continues the style of gameplay from the main Neptune floor. Alright, and here we are. You'd complete this section, and then you have the final outside. Well, technically not the final outside, but you may as well consider it the final outside. You got some wall hops here. You gotta sort of wrap to the other side of that one. X-pusher. You can attempt the Florida Man shortcut. Don't attempt the Florida Man shortcut on a legit run. That is a very bad idea. Unless you mess it up so bad like I just did, where you jump after the X-pusher like stops. Okay, now you have this no jump section where if you fall down here, it'll give you your jump back so you don't get soft locked. It says use slash each here, so you want to do this and then slash each here and then press shift lock when you're at like the peak height of that animation. The neon blocks show you where the walls are. Dashed neon blocks are walls that can be jumped over once you get your jump back. In some spots, you may need to walk around or wrap around. So you can't get soft lock anywhere here. Like there's trusses and ramps and things that make it possible to get back like up here no matter where you go. Well, there isn't one here, but you can slash each here jump. What you're supposed to do is go this way and then walk around and then another walk around and go up here to press. You kind of have to move your camera like that. You press that button, which will open this door and also deactivate that. And you need to go this way to get the jump resetter. There we go. Now you can jump again, and now you can get back this way. With your jump back, you can jump over the dashed lines, which will make it possible to get back up here. And where we're actually trying to go is over here, where you can go here and back underneath here and walk across there. Head hitter, wrap around onto the one stud, and jump down here. Okay, so you got this moving part, which will take you up here. Jump to the spinning truss. Then you want to go up to here and onto this spinning truss. Just make sure you don't fall off of it, and then you can like ladder flick off there. Now be careful on these because it will end like there's like one stud at the end of the conveyor. So like, yeah, be aware it does that. Okay, so that leads us to Pluto, which I read all the philosophical signs earlier, so I'm just gonna not right now. We're just gonna focus only on the gameplay. Head hitters, yeah, it's like very easy because that was the point. None of this final outside as the final challenge of the tower. We have the long, perilous outside the whole time, but the longest outside is the asteroid belt, which is in the middle of the tower. Or maybe it's more like a third through the tower. I don't really know yet. These sorts of things will be revealed in the next video where I do the full playthrough, because you'll be able to see, well, when I get to the asteroid belt, it's about a third of the way through the video. Distance from sun, 3.7 billion miles. Well, there's the wind pad. It does the whole camera sequence, but you just get stuck at the end for all eternity, so, yeah. Alright, so that is going to conclude today's video. The next Tower of the Planets video will be the final one, in which I showcase the entire tower start to finish. This is the longest tower I've ever built, and I expect that video to be over an hour long. I'll see you at its premiere. Between now and then, I'll make some finishing touches and build the lobby and wind room and stuff. If you have any last minute suggestions for this tower, you can let me know in the Discord server, link in the description. I'm very excited for this tower to be finished, and I hope you are as well. I'll see you in the next video, and have a great day.